I will always come back and say this. What General Manager Les Snead did, what the Los Angeles Rams did as an organization, was the right move. And the reason it was the right move, because it worked. They made a conscientious decision over the past few years that they were going to go all in. They didn't care about future impacts. They didn't care about long-term damage done to the organization. They didn't care about the draft picks they were losing. They said, we want to try and win a championship now, and we're going to go all in to do so. So, a couple of years ago, they make the big trade to bring in Matthew Stafford. They go out there and they trade for Jalen Ramsey. This is a team that over the years has not been afraid to leverage those marquee premium draft picks into players that can help their team now to bring in stars. And it paid off for them in 2021 season when they won the Super Bowl. That's the name of the game. As far as I'm concerned, fuck the consistently win 10, 11 games a year. Give me you win a championship, and if you suck the next decade, but then you go all in again, you win another championship, I'll take that all fucking day. I'm not trying to play for almost or consolation prizes here. It's championship or fucking bust, and I will always applaud the Rams and the organization, their organization, for what they did, the decisions they made, and the fact that it ultimately worked. Now, coming into the 2022 season as defending champs, I think it was safe to say that a lot of people still had decently high expectations for the Rams, and they were big-time disappointments. Some of that was due to injuries, like Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp only played 9 games. Aaron Donald played 11 games. But that doesn't excuse all of it. They started off the season looking bad. You could see not having Odell Beckham Jr. there as a speed option at wide receiver was hurting this team's passing game. Matthew Stafford looked kind of rough. They had other issues on the team on both sides of the ball. They finished 5-12. As much as you want to blame a couple of those key players being out for close to half the season, that ain't it, right? Because those guys were there for a good portion of the season. This team just stunk. Plain and simple. And that stinks, because if you go all in like that, you'd like to maximize your championship window, as short as it is, a little bit better than that. But at least they got the one ring, if nothing else. What's interesting, though, in this offseason, they sat there and traded away Jalen Ramsey. So one of those guys that they given up a couple of first-round picks a few years ago to bring in, now they're doing salary dump shit and trading him. What did they trade him for, like a third-round pick and a tight end or some crazy shit like that? That's nuts. That's nuts. And kind of head-scratching, because you're saying, if you could swing it, you've already went all in, why would you go away from that at this point? So that was kind of interesting. In terms of the draft, there are no first-round pick again because of the Matthew Stafford trade. Steve Avila, I would assume, is going to be a starter year one on the interior of that offensive line. Byron Young is going to be an edge rusher that they need that can play opposite of Leonard Floyd. Kobe Turner's, I think, going to contribute some as a rookie. This is a team, though, that is really based off of their stars, and they might rely on their stars more than any team in the National Football League, and they have to, because that's the way this team's been built. They've forsaken depth. They've forsaken bringing in a bunch of new, young, fresh talent every year. They've been riding these certain star guys, and that starts with Aaron Donald. Healthy Aaron Donald is arguably the greatest interior defensive lineman ever. That's not recency bias. That's not overreaction. That's reality. Somebody put on Twitter recently about, it was a poll where they said who's been the most dominant non-quarterback in the NFL since 2000. And, of course, Ray Lewis was the fucking answer. It's not Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis wasn't that dominant. Ray Lewis, great player. Great player. First ballot Hall of Famer, absolutely. But he ain't fucking Aaron Donald. No. That's how great Aaron Donald fucking is. He's a game wrecker. And if you remember several years back when J.J. Watt had the peak of his career in that few-year stretch where he was just an absolutely insane fucking monster, unstoppable force, immovable object, both all combined. Aaron Donald's that and more, and has been it for longer. It's just fucking insane. So if they can have him for a full season, that automatically makes this team a lot better. Cooper Kupp. Here's a guy you could talk about, well, he's benefited a lot from playing in the slot and going up against linebackers and safeties that can't cover him, but he's elite at what he does, dude. You go back to 2021, he was a Super Bowl MVP for a reason. He had a monster season that year. 2022, the passing game took a big dip, and even with that, Cooper Kupp was still producing for the half of the season that he played. They got Cooper Kupp back healthy. They're in a much better spot. And then Matthew Stafford, when he's healthy, Padford's an top 8 to 12 quarterback in the league. Like, as much as we look at the Rams and how disappointing they were, and Stafford didn't have the best 2022, I'll grant you, but that's still a top 8 to 12 quarterback in the league. So you're talking about a full season of Aaron Donald, a full season of Cooper Kupp, a full season of Matthew Stafford. If they get that from all three of those guys, like, this team will be markedly better in a hurry. They really will. Now, I've got plenty of question marks around this team. I think the running game, they're a bottom barrel rushing attack, and they really haven't done anything to address that, which kind of surprises me. They could use a little more balance. I look at their offensive line. It was a concern in 2022, and to me right now it looks like it's still going to be. I don't think Noteboom holds up nearly as well as left tackle as even a 40-year-old Andrew Whitworth did on the Super Bowl team. So they've got some concerns there on the offensive line. And then the secondary. Like, familiar faces like Jalen Ramsey, Taylor Rapp no longer there. That feels like a unit that can be gotten to quite a bit. Unless you've got some unsung heroes that come out of the woodworks and they surprise. This feels like a secondary that's going to be a weakness for this team and this defense all year long. In terms of the Rams, what do I look at here? I look at the first 4 weeks of their schedule. They go to Seattle, they host San Francisco, they go to Cincinnati, they go to Indianapolis. So 3 of the first 4 on the road, a couple of divisional games in there, and first 3 games against playoff teams from last year. Like, if the Rams are going to match the prediction that I'm going to give them here in a moment, if the Rams are going to turn it around and have a big-time 2023, then they're going to have to handle some business against a tough initial stretch of schedule. And same thing, I think you look at later in the year, like, there's an opportunity there for them to make up some ground, because I think, like, the Rams schedule is brutal to start. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to see, like, 1-3 and people like sky is falling and they panic and everything, but all of a sudden team starts to look better, schedule loosens up a little bit, and then they get to the last 4 weeks of the season where they face the Commanders and the Saints, and they go to New York to take on the Giants, and they go to San Francisco in Week 18. Like, you could be in a spot there where now the Rams have built up some momentum, and they're a really hot team going into December and January, which is what I envision could happen. I'm being a little contrarian here, but I'm going to pick the Rams to win the NFC West. I think they go 11-6. I don't think their schedule is that incredibly difficult. And if those 3 guys that I mentioned, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford, are healthy for the entire season, this is absolutely a team. With the greatness of Sean McVay at head coach, this is absolutely a team that can win this division and make some noise in the playoffs this year. But they better do it now, because that window is closing very, very quickly.